Hello and welcome back to the Scale Modelling Cafe and part 2 of the Clear Prop H-75N project in 1/48 scale. As is traditional, we're going to start off in the cockpit, and it's really highly detailed. There's a fair amount of tiny little photo etch bits in there, but the plastic itself is beautifully detailed. Here I'm just gluing in the gun mounts. Got to be careful, they are handed, and we'll put the guns in towards the end. Despite the plastic being beautifully detailed, as I mentioned, I thought it was worth just adding a little bit of wiring just to dress things up. So various materials here, a little bit of copper, some nickel silver wire and some lead wire. All have their different properties. The lead is obviously very easy to bend into shape, but it can sort of distort and go a bit wobbly. The silver nickel is very stiff and stays very straight, and the copper wire is a kind of a mix in between the two. I managed to find a few photographs online of a restored aeroplane, and using photos of P-36s as well. I kind of copied what I could see in the photo, and you see that makes a difference. Actually, it's not too much extra work, and it really does make a big difference, I think. Test fitting is the order of the day. Just lining things up here, and you'll see me get these little drill bits out quite a few times actually. It's worthwhile doing that, just drilling the holes so you can feed the wires through, and it does make for a nice, neat and actually stronger sub-assembly. So I'm just lining things up here, just judging it by eye, and then just going in with the drill bit then. And then once the hole is drilled, we'll just line things up and we can push things in, and it just clicks into place. As I mentioned, there were some tiny little bits as well. This is the throttle quadrant, and some photo etch parts for the levers. Obviously they are flat, so it's worthwhile just going in with little blobs of super glue there, just to build up the sort of round knob shape, if you like, for want of a better phrase. Now just adding in some tiny details, and you can see reasonable amount of photo etch going on. Now I really don't know why I bother doing this. I did it on the last project on the Edward 109 72nd scale, did this sort of pre-shading thing, and I thought I'd give it one more go, and I'm not going to do it again, frankly. It does make it a bit awkward. I do think using black and white like this, the contrast is too great, and it's a bit of a waste of time, frankly. So next time I'm just going to post shade. So you can see the seat here. This is the resin seat from SBS. The kit one is actually really quite clunky, and it's not very nice. It's surprising actually, because everything else is so beautifully moulded. So undercoat of silver, that's LP whatever it is, silver lacquer from Tamiya, and then this sort of bronze green looking at the pictures, it was a different green to the main cockpit parts. So we just used the hairspray technique. It's all MRP, all the greens. And just going in with the tweezers to do some scratches. Obviously the hairspray is great for chips, but just going in with the sharp tweezers for the scratches, and we get a really nice well-worn effect. So back to the side panels now, and again MRP, the classic interior zinc chromate green as opposed to the bronze green. And actually it took quite a bit to cover up the high contrast between the black and the white and just have a little bit shining through. So as I said earlier, yeah, I'm going to drop this technique, I think, this pre-shading in the cockpit business, and just go back to post-shading, which I do find much easier, much more controllable, and lends itself to a better technique overall, better finish. And the floor, you can see there how detailed the floor is, and that classic Hawk curve shape. Yeah, so if you don't know, the floor is actually the top of the wing. That's why it's that classic curve shape. All the little bits and pieces, rudder pedals, they were chipped with the hairspray as well. And this is the forward bulkhead. You're not actually going to see that, or the guns. So you can see here that I've done quite a lot of the detail painting with the brush. Apologies, I didn't film that. I forgot to turn the camera on. But I'm using these Airscale placards, cockpit placards. It's a feature of American fighters, all these placards. They do like a placard, did the Americans. So I just, to be honest, I just used random ones and just made it look really busy. Even the tiny little ones on things like the throttle quadrant here. It all adds to the overall busyness of the cockpit, and I think it works wonders actually to dress things up. And you can see in this one, just all the black boxes get the treatment as well. I did try and use some references, but it's quite hard to come by actually. So a little bit of artistic license never hurts sometimes. And here's the other side, a little bit sparser on the other side, but see the map case there, that's been picked out in brown. All the other black boxes, a little bit of silver here and there. I didn't do a gloss varnish on this one. The paint is glossy enough as it is straight out the bottle, so I just mixed up a very dark green wash. It's from the Ammo range of oil brushes, and just just thinned it down with enamel thinners, and you can just touch it in and it just flows right into the nooks and crannies. You might think that the contrast may be a little bit too big, but actually once all the excess has been cleaned away and a matte or satin coat has gone down over the top, that kind of blends everything in. And you can always put a filter down if you wish. That's a very thin wash, and that will just tint things and just goes a little bit of way to blend things in. And obviously not forgetting the seat as well, it takes the dark green wash very well. Floor was a little bit different, there's lots of sort of rivet detail and everything, and just using capillary action doesn't really work. So that was more of a sludge wash. Here's the other side. Do like these long brushes from Ammo, they do hold an awful lot of paint. Makes things really efficient actually. I really quite like them. So here's the first step, going in with the cotton bud, and this is essential for the floor. That detail is incredibly fine, those raised rivets, and just by sort of polishing, if you like, with the cotton bud, it will leave the wash in the recesses, and it actually works a treat, this technique here. And then just going in with the sharp pointed cotton bud, that can get right into the detail, right around the nooks and crannies. And we just flip-flop between the two. And then same for the cockpit sidewalls. The pointy one actually is quite accurate. It does unravel fairly quickly. This brand I've got, it's just a cheap one I found in the supermarket out here in Saudi, but really useful. I'm sure if you splashed out on the actual Tamiya ones, they would hold their shape a lot better. And then if anything's a little bit stubborn or a little bit difficult to reach, you can just use a fine brush. You probably could get away with not even moistening it with thinner actually over this gloss background. Okay, the instrument panel, I did actually experiment and use the kit's decal, and then you paint the photo etch instrument panel and lay it on over the top, and it did work really well actually, but I did get it slightly off center. This is a Edward pre-painted set for the Trumpeter P36, so essentially pretty much identical, just some minor differences, but it did work an absolute treat. What I tend to do is just blast a coat of matte varnish of the top one, and then just by using the super glue, which is going to be glossy, we just put the matted down one over the top. Just being very careful not to smudge things. A little bit of gentle pressure with the tips of the tweezers, and you'll see the contrast between the matte of the colour photo etch and the glossy super glue, which simulates the glass of the dials really quite nicely. Now for the seat belts, again the Edward colour photo etch was used here. Photo etch, copper photo etch is provided in the kit, and the seat belts are really nice, but to be honest, seeing I had the set, I was a little bit lazy and decided to use the Edward colour photo etch rather than paint up the kit ones. My super glue, it really struggles out here. I really ought to keep it in the fridge, but I always forget, and it loses its stick quite quickly, so it can be quite frustrating, and I do use an awful lot of accelerator. Just using a little length of wire there with a tiny amount of super glue on, and then I can just bend the straps into place, hold it, and really hope it's going to stick. Just scraping some paint off here, ready to start assembling now. So just removing the paint from the back of the seat and applying super glue, because obviously the seat is resin, remember, and we can put the frame, which comes in the kit. And thank you very much to SBS of Hungary, because they've designed this seat with this kit in mind, and they have designed it to fit the kit parts, which is absolutely superb. I love that. And then that just sticks to the rear bulkhead. It's a shame behind there should be a fuel tank, which is not included in the kit, but to be honest, you can't really see much. A few finer details just going in. Fire extinguisher here. There's a oxygen bottle or something as well, and a few other little bits and bobs just to put on there. And I'm not sure whether red was the colour, but it does add a splash of colour. Just opening up some more of the holes in preparation for the assembly. Putting the throttle quadrant into place. Yeah, a little bit more glue needed. Pigments. I always do this with P40s. I'm not really sure why it's just P40s, but yeah, a couple of earth shades, a sort of dusty shade and an earth shade, and it's just worked into the surface. The parts have had a coat of satin varnish, so it will grip a little bit more. So we just work it into the surface just with the dry brush. And then we're just going to get a little bit of thinner and just touch it into place. And we can do a little bit more blending now as well. And to speed things up, I always hit this with a hairdryer, and you'll see all the tide marks and things then. And you can just blend that with the dry brush. You see how much actual pigment ends up on the wet brush. And not forgetting the sidewalls as well. So obviously just concentrating on the bottom half of the sidewalls. Don't want to go too mad. And just using the same technique. You see I've added some levers there and just a bit of blending. Sorry, here are the sidewalls. Getting ahead of myself. So as I said, just concentrating on the bottom where the dirt and grime and dust is likely to collect. And there we are, just going in with the thinner. It is just enamel thinner. I'm not using pigment fixer. Should really, I suppose, but yeah, it's not really going to rub off because it's in the cockpit. Okay, now we can start bringing everything together. So the rotor pedals go in. It's quite a positive location. It's well engineered, well thought out. Same for the instrument panel, which kind of floats actually in between the two halves. So you need to make sure it is secure, just using a bit of accelerator for the super glue there. The control column just sits in the holes in the bottom. And again, accelerator is an absolute essential tool for me. You see, even with the accelerator, it takes a little while to go off. And there we go. It's looking really busy. You can see I've added the guns there at the front. Some more drillage required for the wiring. And lots of test fitting required, but it all snaps in together. Obviously I've overcomplicated it with the wiring. Without that, this would be an absolute cinch. And now for the final bit. I'm just lining up the wire with the holes. It is easier with the tweezers, to be honest, just to poke it through. And we can pull it through, and this is the final bit now. And the wires actually really do add that extra bit of strength. This one's a little bit more complicated, just bending it out the way. You're not going to see it down there. And a little bit more complicated obviously because we need to line up the rudder pedals and the instrument panel as well. Once we get it all sorted, it just clicks into place. And we can set it all in place with my favourite ammo glue and its extremely precise brush. I'm just holding it together with a little bit of pressure just while the glue sets up. And there is the completed cockpit. So I'll just leave you with some high-res pictures now of the weather cockpit in its component parts, and as I go along, gluing various bits and pieces together. And you can see how highly detailed the kit parts are, and just that addition of the wiring in the placards really elevates that detail. And that's it for part 2. So in part 3 we do a bit of squeezing with liquid cement, belt and braces approach for the wing to fuselage join, and have a self-induced massive faff with the cowling, and it was all my fault. But I got there in the end. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next part. Cheers, bye bye.